I have already made videos about every possible piece of media of the Umamusume franchise. The first season, the second season, the third season, the movie, Cinderella Grey, the manga of Cinderella Grey, Star Blossom, and even every single side story that is available. But I think that is just not enough. This franchise came like a storm, both to the West as a whole, but also to my heart, and as such, I wanted to make a new video talking about something unique, specifically referring to every single protagonist and how I would personally rank them in terms of how good all of them are compared to each other. This list will include any specific protagonist for all the animes, but also the mangas, with only 2 rules to be added. The first thing is that this list will only include the characters while they're in a protagonist role. Multiple different characters have appeared as secondary characters in certain pieces of media in which they are not the protagonists. Mainly characters like Oguri Cap and Special Week had made a lot of cameos, and because I don't think that it's fair to compare or add anything for certain characters that have way more time on screen, I will only count when they are protagonists. If the already mentioned Special Week appears as a cameo or as a regular side character in the second season, that is not gonna count, and I'm only gonna count the things that she has been a protagonist in. The second thing is that I am not gonna count the characters that are protagonists of side stories like Umayoung. Because Umayoung is a compilation of short stories, it has a constantly switching set of protagonists. Not only the line between secondary and main character is razor thin, but these stories use every Uma that existed at some point in time, meaning that, quite literally, I would be ranking every single Uma based on a 4-panel story. And even if I go for the stories that would be slightly longer, like the one from Anthology Comic Star, they would still be individual chapters. And because that doesn't make sense, alongside the fact that 90% of the video would be me saying that I like slightly more another inconsequential and kinda useless protagonist just because it was slightly funnier in its one panel that appears in the entirety of one of these side stories, I am not gonna count it. So for this video, I'll be excluding all Umayoung, Umayuru, Umamusume Anthology Comic Star, and Umamusumeshi. And with that out of the way, let's start with... Out of all of the 15 protagonists that are across the 11 different pieces of media of this franchise, the worst one undisputably is the BMW Trio. The BMW Trio are the protagonists of the short special called BMW no Chikai. It is a special of only 3 episodes, and it has a couple of interesting things behind. In summary, the main focus of this story is a relay race, which means that instead of having just a couple Umas, we actually have 21 Umas because there are 3 different teams of 7 Umas, and all of them are Umas that are important for the franchise either at that point in time or in the future. The problem of this being the main focus of this whole story and over half of the whole special being directly related with that is the fact that the BMW Trio doesn't manage to shine at all. All Biwa Hayahide, Narita Taishin, and Winning Ticket are supposed to be the main protagonists of this story, yet 2 of these characters do not appear up until the second episode of an only 3-episode special, but also in the second episode none of them actually particularly shine, and in the last one is the only time that you can kinda say that they shine, and it's just barely for like half of the episode, because the last quarter of the episode is not them and the first quarter is not them either. So because they have literally no development at all, I will put them all at the bottom. If anything, the only one that might have a small pass would be Biwa Hayahide, because we see a little bit about her story with her sister Narita Bryan, but it's such a small detail that I will not be putting her above the others. I don't think that it deserves it. At number 12 in the list, we have TM Opera O. TM Opera O is a really cool character. She is one of the coolest characters in the whole franchise. She has a lot of aura, She is fun to watch, and she has the most glaring personality of any Uma that has been put as a main protagonist in any type of story. However, TM Opera suffers for a very similar fate to the girls of the BMW trio. She is one of the three protagonists of a 4-chapter OVA, being the OVA called Road to the Top. And not only that, but she is also the by far least important protagonist out of the three that are protagonizing Road to the Top. Because both of the characters that we're gonna see later on are either way more interesting as a sheer concept, or they are the whole focus of the story. And even though TM Opera O is cool, she doesn't have the same level of interesting things to say as a character by itself, other than the fact that she is cool. And the fact that she is kinda like a final boss, force of nature type of character in the beginning of a new era movie doesn't help her enough, because she is still not a protagonist, and as such is not gonna be counted. So even though I love the aura surrounding her, I'm sorry TM Opera O, but you are not that great of a character individually so far. The next protagonist we're gonna talk about is Haru Urara. In the one time that she was actually the protagonist of something in the manga Haru Urara Gambaru. Haru Urara Gambaru was the first piece of media of the franchise and one of the most obscure of them all. Most people knows about the anime, some people knows about the source material of the anime in the manga Starting Gate, but very few people knows about Haru Urara and the fact that she was the protagonist of her own story. The Haru Urara that we see is very interesting on her own. She is not the regular Haru Urara we're used to see of being just always positive and always shining. No, she is way more like a genuine child. Her personality can be explosive at times, and she is not saving anything for herself. She is also obsessed with her brother, but we do not talk about that because we are not in that time of the day, sorry. But yeah, she has more personality than in other pieces of media of the franchise. However, her personality, even though is better than nothing, is still not a phenomenally crafted one. Her manga is by far the shortest manga that appears in the entirety of the franchise, having less than 20 chapters total, and as such, I cannot say that is the best thing. And she doesn't have enough time to be developed. At least because she is the undisputable main protagonist of this story, she has a little bit more time to shine compared to the previous ones, but because of how weak overall Haru Urara Gambaru is, she is going at the bottom of the list. Both because of her manga, but also because she is not that particularly interesting by herself. The next protagonist is gonna be Silent Suzuka. Wait, what? Silent Suzuka? She is not the protagonist. Well, she actually is. In the manga Starting Gate. Starting Gate is the manga that is the actual source material of the first season of the anime. It is a very rough actual source material because for the most part it is not fully logical intended as a genuinely true source material because the races are kinda not there, like quite literally. However, we're not talking about that, but we're talking about the character, and I'm gonna say that Silent Suzuka is a little bit interesting in this time around. In Starting Gate there's 3 protagonists, which I'm not gonna count one of them because I don't care, but basically most of this story is focused around Silent Suzuka and her relation with another character that we're gonna see later on. This character is very interesting and their relation is kinda cute to watch. There's not a lot of development, but she is a passable character and it feels right. She is not outstanding in anything, but she is good at some things, and just because of that is better than what Haru Urara was. Sorry Haru, I love you, but you are not winning against Silent Suzuka. The next character we're gonna see is Narita Top Road. Narita Top Road is a great protagonist for her own story in Road to the Top. However, there is once again certain issues with her. She has a logical personality, her struggles are normal, are actually plausible and believable, and she has a solid and actually kinda charismatic type of personality, but she has certain issues. First, even though she is kinda charismatic, she doesn't shine at all because there's someone else shining more in Team Opera O. There's also another character that has a more interesting story behind that we're gonna see later on, and also is once again the issue of she being the protagonist of a 4-chapter OVA in which the time is split between she, Team Opera O, and the other girl. So even though I like Narita Top Road personally, she cannot make it further than this point in the list. And now our next protagonist is gonna be Special Week from the anime of Pretty Derby Season 1. Wait, only that? There's no way, right? That is impossible. Are you mad? And now we are gonna talk about Special Week from both the Pretty Derby Season 1 but also from Starting Gate. If anyone has seen my channel and knows a little bit about what I think about the manga and anime overall, you know damn well that I think the Special Week is kind of a weak protagonist. However, she has a very interesting theme surrounding her and is Starting Gate. Once again, Starting Gate is not a manga that has anything to do with Umamusume, like quite literally you can remove the ears and you will have a regular high school drama, but because of that, it adds a little bit of depth to the characters, mainly Special Week and some of the secondaries like Vodka and Daiwa, but in this case we're talking about Spe. And Spe actually gains a little bit of interesting things behind. It also boosts herself by the fact that she is the only protagonist of multiple pieces of media, thanks to the fact that in Pre-Derby she is passable, I guess. She is funny, at least that is good, and sometimes her struggles are interesting, even though she is by far the weakest of the main series of anime, combining the fact that she is one of the very few protagonists that is a protagonist the whole way through, alongside a passable manga. She is getting this spot barely above Narita. Barely. Wait, why did I say Narita? Which of them? You, or you? I don't know. Now, the next protagonist is Admire Vega from the Road to the Top OVA. Admire Vega has easily the most interesting story among all of the conjoined protagonists of a single piece of media. As I said, the BMW trio doesn't have anything, TM overall is mostly just forming aura, and even though Narita Top Row has an interesting story with her father and why she wants to win, at the end of the day it's just a good story that we have seen a lot of times. Admire Vega is different. The story of Admire Vega is completely different out of anything that we have seen in this series and anything that we will probably see in almost every other piece of media, period. She feels guilty because she ate her own sister while she was on the womb. Something that is an actual medical condition that can happen. And now she feels like she does not deserve this spot and she thinks that her sister was the one that deserved to live. Something insane and such a unique struggle to have that I cannot say anything but wow, how did they manage to actually believe and think in something like this? It is fantastic. Sadly, because once again, she is just the main protagonist of exactly one chapter in Road to the Top, and because she's, even though a protagonist, still not that important compared to Narita Top Road in the rest of it, is gonna stay just at this spot. But hey, she was the only protagonist of a special that managed to surpass someone from a main series story. So congratulations, Admire Vega, you actually did something right. Now stop struggling, please. I don't want to see you cry anymore. The next character is Sakura Laurel from the manga Star Blossom. Sakura Laurel is very interesting. She has a very unique personality in terms of being very positive, something that is very common in this franchise, but not extremely positive. She is someone with high aspirations and a lot of determination, something very cool. However, she does suffer for certain issues. Because Star Blossom is one of the very few pieces of media of the franchise that is currently airing, there's not a lot of content of it. There's only roughly 50 chapters of the manga that had been translated to English, so it's very difficult to actually know what is happening. We have not seen enough of her story, and you can even argue that the most interesting character so far from her story is actually Narita Bryan. But regardless, talking about her, she feels like the character that has the most amount of potential to actually rise a lot of spots. However, because she is in such an early stage of her own career and her own story, I would have to leave it roughly at the middle of the list. And now, finally reaching the top 5 of the list, out of all of the characters, undisputably, the most unexpected for you is probably this one, which is Golshi-chan from Pisu Pisu Supi Supi Golshi-chan. Oh my goodness, how can I even explain this girl? Now, this is not Goldship. This is not Goldship at all. The regular Goldship has yet to be the protagonist of any individual story. She has been a consistent secondary support for multiple pieces of Nido the franchise, mainly the Pretty Derby anime, but she is yet to be a full-on protagonist of her own series story. But Golshi-chan is not a series story. Golshi-chan is a pure comedy. And oh my god, is one of the most hilarious ever. Golshi-chan is such a phenomenal character in terms of pure comedy that I genuinely do not care that she kinda doesn't have a story at all. Her personality is fantastic, the way in which the things are portrayed for the comedy, specifically with Goldship, are phenomenal, and she is arguably the character that has made me laugh the most ever since I stopped watching Gintama, and if you know anything about me, you know how much that means for me. Now going for the fourth spot on the list, and actually going for the protagonist that everyone agrees on them being good, we finally go to Jungle Pocket. Jungle Pocket is a fantastic protagonist for the time that she has on screen. However, she has a small kinda big issue, that is that for the most part, people are more interested in the villain of the anime, which is Agnes Tachyon. That they kinda forget that Jungle Pocket is the actual protagonist at the beginning of a new era. And oh my god, I don't know why, because she is phenomenal. Her personality is very unique in terms of being the only protagonist that is actually cocky, which is very cool and very different from others. But she also is justified, but not because she is just talented. She tries very hard. She is the most hard worker that you can be as an Uma. And she is phenomenal in the way that she is portrayed in terms of trying to have the whole shadow of Agnes Tachyon stopping her, like, funny. And also she being able to overcome the weakness of no longer being able to face her. It is phenomenal, and I really love her. If it wasn't because she's the protagonist for such a small amount of time, being just the equivalent of a single movie, because that's what she is, she would probably manage to maybe even make the top 2. But for now, I love you, Pocket. I even call my own cat like you. So, we'll see you later. And in case that you think that I'm joking, like, say hello to Pocket. Hello. And now, finally going into the big 3, and what might be my most controversial take so far, I'm gonna give it to Tokai Teiyo. Tokai Teiyo is phenomenal as a protagonist. She has probably the most interesting story while she is on screen in the anime so far. She has all of the struggles with injuries. She is very cool to watch. And wait a second, why the hell I'm saying all of these fantastic things if I'm not putting her at first? Well, the thing with Tokai Teiyo is that she is more of a moments type of character. Her highs are probably the individual highest of the franchise, with the exception of maybe one character and one individual moment. But other than that, she feels like she is undisputably the one with the highest highs. but the in-betweens are kinda not that big of a deal. They are good, they're cool, but to be honest, she kinda just feels like a slightly funnier version of Special Week when she is not in those insanely hype moments and all of those insanely emotional ones. And even though that is not inherently a bad thing, I feel like other characters make that distinction in a much better way. And also the fact that she is kinda like not the only main protagonist of her story, and you have the shared time with Rice Shower that I'm not counting in this list because she is just the protagonist of a single arc. But that is time that Tokaiteyo could be the protagonist and she's not. And as such, I kinda like her just a little bit less than the second spot on this list. Now, the second spot on the list is gonna go for the best protagonist in all of the anime, in my opinion, which is Kita-san Black. Kita-san Black is a phenomenal protagonist that makes me be angry at the fact that so many people say that the third season is a really noticeable downgrade compared to the second one. It is a downgrade, but not as much. And one of the main reasons is this girl. Kita-san Black is the actual perfect representation of what is the local hero in sports. There are several different sports in which you are gonna have a homegrown talent that all of a sudden is gonna sign for the team of their own town as well, and that will make everyone surrounding them extremely proud of it. But not only the thing in which she's based on is interesting, but also she as a character is very cool. All of the things related with that, alongside the struggles of getting to the retirement part of the sport, is something very unique and something very rare for this type of animes and mangas. You usually have an either never-ending story or the protagonist kinda stops being a protagonist or even being alive in the middle of being a sportsman. Why the hell? What? How? And yeah, even though her peak is definitely weaker than the peak of Tokaiteyo, her consistency of being way better in the times that she is not those peaks and she's not forced into getting those peaks, it's what makes me put her slightly above Mr. Tokaiteyo. Why did I say Mr.? I'm gonna say it because it's the original horse. Don't blame me, I'm trying to save face of the blatant mistake that I just committed. And now for the number one spot in the list, and what is the undisputable best protagonist in this entire franchise, we have Madame My Girl Oguri Cap from the Cinderella Grey anime and the Cinderella Grey manga. Oguri Cap is kinda like a cheat code in all of the protagonists of this story. It's kinda like having Steel Ball Run in the middle of JoJo's. The rest of Umamusume is great, but oh my god, Cinderella Grey is so much better than everything else that makes me feel sad for the other parts to being so clearly overshadowed. Cinderella Grey is the story of one of the most important horses in the history of Japanese horse racing, called Oguri Cap, and everything related with the story of Oguri Cap is made with so much love. The way in which they portray that the original horse struggles so hard with things such as even standing up, how they represent the struggles of not being able to participate in the big races of the Triple Crown, how the representation of her character being a careless girl but that actually has so much love for racing, more than any other protagonist that we have seen so far. How she is connected not only to that but also to her roots back in Kasamatsu, the place in which she or he, in case of the original horse, started racing before becoming an actual national phenom. And so many things with her character, so many things with her personality, and she having probably the best moment in the entirety of the franchise in how she stopped caring, she stopped wanting to race, and how the gray monster was unable to race and how it was a shell of her former self, to the point that not even her fans were able to actually believe that she was the ugly cap that they knew. She has so many things to her side. She is the most interesting in terms of whole story. She is the funniest, but also the most insightful, the one that is determined the most to win. And I truly love her because of that. I can say 1,000 different things about Ugly Cap. I can make an entire video just talking about her. But for now, because this video is for the overall Umas, I have to say it. If you haven't read the manga of Cinderella Grey and you want to watch one of the best sports mangas ever created, and you want to see one of the best protagonists ever created, just go and read it. Go and read Cinderella Grey and go and watch the beautiful writing that Ugly Cap has as a character and the beautiful writing that the franchise of Umamusume can accomplish if they try hard enough. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you all enjoyed it. If you want more content like this, talking about different facets of the entirety of the Umamusume war, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. It not only helps the channel to grow, but it also makes me be very thankful to every single one of you. And now, without anything else to explain, once again, I hope that you all enjoyed it, and see you next time. Bye bye. Bye.